Hello there. Why aren't you playing Ninja Gaiden 4 and watching my video instead? Well, first of all, thank you for watching this video. If you have any interest at all in playing Ninja Gaiden 4, maybe go check out the game on Game Pass or consider picking it up because, spoiler alert, I'm going to be essentially recommending this game. This video right here is only my my first and maybe second and third impressions of the game, as I am only about halfway through Ninja Gaiden 4 right now. I'm on chapter 10 of what I hear are 19 total chapters in this game. So we'll call it halfway through. Oops. Let's get that video playing again. Why am I only halfway through the game after the game's been out for over a week now? I'm slow. I'm a really slow gamer. This should come as no secret to people who follow my channel and follow my live streams. I could trot out the usual excuse of being an older gamer, the dad with 3 jobs and 10 kids, that sort of thing. But I mean, I'm just slow. That's been the case for like most of my gaming career, and that's fine. I pardon me. I'm just here to give you, hopefully, a more ground level perspective on this game. Not from the perspective of someone who's a really seasoned veteran of Ninja Gaiden, although I have played the previous games and I love Ninja Gaiden 2. But I'm not a pro gamer. I'm not someone who does these games on Master Ninja, which is like their equivalent of the nightmare difficulties. I'm not that type of person, and I probably never will be. So I'm not going to be going super deep into game mechanics and game balance, difficulty balance, and this or that. But I do have enough experience in the series and enough affinity and love for these type of games to hopefully provide some value and insight to people who are still on the fence. Whether you're brand new to Ninja Gaiden or you're a lapsed player, perhaps you played the original from 2005, 2004, and haven't played since, or you've played Ninja Gaiden 2 or Ninja Gaiden 3 a little bit over the past few years on Game Pass or what have you as part of the Master Collection. I'm here to just assuage any sort of doubts and fears you may have about like, oh, did Platinum Games do a good enough job to do justice to Team Ninja and the Ninja Gaiden series and all that sort of jazz. So hopefully, yeah, this gives you a bit of a different perspective as opposed to someone who's just like run through the game 4 times and then is doing like a no hit run on master difficulty now, which, to be honest, is a bit maybe too advanced, a bit too far up the sophistication ladder to be of use, maybe to someone who's a bit more casual. Okay, so I think the first thing I just want to get out of the way is to just dive into what I think about the combat. That is the meat and potatoes of Ninja Gaiden. And to no one's surprise, I would say the combat feels great. Just from like a high level assessment of the combat, I feel Platinum Games did an incredible job of threading the needle where they had to pay respect to the core tenets of Ninja Gaiden and maintain enough of the core feel to as not alienate experienced Ninja Gaiden fans. But being the primary developer of Ninja Gaiden 4, they also wanted to put their own stamp, put their own spin on what they thought was a good Ninja Gaiden game and to update it maybe to a more modern times. To put the Platinum Games spice on the tried and true Ninja Gaiden formula. And I believe they've done a really, really good job of doing that. The game is incredibly deep in terms of its mechanics, and I'm not going to get into all of them here, but I would just say that it feels really good. There's some nitpicks here and there. Right off the bat, the default control scheme is really odd in that they switch the block button from the left trigger of the controller to the right trigger. And this is so that they accommodate a new function in combat called the Bloodraven form, which they bind to the left trigger by default. Ninja Gaiden veterans will immediately notice this change because all previous games have put the block slash dodge button mapped to the left trigger, right? And so the first thing I did within seconds of playing the opening tutorial was I swapped it back. Fortunately, there's a control preset. It's the second control preset, which allows you to move the block from right trigger to left trigger, pardon me, and the Bloodraven form goes from left trigger to right trigger. And thank goodness for that. Now, the downside of that is that later in the game, you will have the opportunity to unlock some combat skills. There's a lot of unlocks in this game as part of the progression. And there are some skills that require you to be in Bloodraven form. So you have to hold down the button to activate Bloodraven form while also pressing the right bumper, right? So on the default control scheme, right trigger is Bloodraven form. And so it makes it easy. No. Did I get that right? No, on the default control scheme, left trigger is a Bloodraven form, right? So you're doing left trigger, Bloodraven form, and then you can press on the right bumper with the other hand. And then you can input the attack. If you do it my way, control scheme number 2, your right trigger is Bloodraven form, and then you would also have to press the right bumper. I'm the type of person who just uses the index finger to press both right trigger and right bumper, depending on what's required. In order to input this attack, I would need to use my middle finger, for example, to keep the right trigger down while using my index finger to hit right bumper, right? So this is a no-go for me, and because of that, there are like about two skills per weapon that have this scheme, this input scheme. And so I've just not invested in those skills. But you may be someone who takes interest in those skills, but who has it mapped alternatively, where you would have to do this finger spaghetti to get it working. So that is like a little bit of a nitpick. It's a fair warning that you might have to deal with that issue. And I guess if you have one of those advanced pro controllers where you can use paddles, you can get around it. But for me, I just have a standard Xbox controller, and it's sort of annoying. So they should offer the ability to remap the inputs for some of these special attacks. Okay, now that that's out of the way, and I've already praised the overall feel of the combat, let's talk a little bit, just surface level talk about like what makes this combat so cool and how does it set itself apart from the previous Ninja Gaiden games. I'd already talked about Bloodraven form. This is like everything in the game. You play as Yakumo, as you probably already know. Yakumo is a new protagonist in the Ninja Gaiden series, although Ryu Hayabusa, who's the main protagonist from the older games, he's still in this game. He's more of a side character, and you will get to play him for a few chapters. I've not gone that far yet. But Yakumo harnesses this power called Bloodraven form, and you just need to think about Bloodraven form as like if you liken the combat to like typing words, right? You're typing a document. All the attacks you're doing are letters as you type on a keyboard. Bloodraven form allows you to bold your letters for more emphasis, So you're bolding your letters to make a bigger point. And what you do the Bloodraven form is that as you hold it down and do your regular light and heavy attacks, you basically your attacks take on like a stance breaking or armor breaking, guard breaking qualities. So enemies, even the regular enemies, will block your attacks eventually. You can go in on a lot of them, but even the common rank and file enemies will eventually start blocking your attacks. And to break through, you must use Bloodraven form attacks. And it can be as simple as just holding down the trigger and hitting just one light attack to do one swipe, and most of the time you'll break their guard, and then from there you can go back to your regular base form attacks as they're called. And so it's just like a lot of this back and forth between regular attacks and those that are empowered by the Bloodraven form. And then you can string together actually a lot of interesting combinations while attacking on the ground and while in the air, going back and forth between base and Bloodraven attacks. And that alone is already a lot to process, especially as a new player, or even as someone like myself who has come from Ninja Gaiden 2, which I've been replaying recently. It's a lot to take in, but it opens up a lot of flexibility to the combat system. And even though you're not necessarily memorizing, like I found myself not really caring about memorizing a move list. The move lists are actually quite simple on the face of it, but because you're able to just seamlessly flow in and out of base and Bloodraven form and string things together, they allow you to link attacks from one form to the next and back, whether you're on the ground or in the air. It feels really fluid. So not to say that you can just go through and just button mash to your heart's content, but there are moments where you don't necessarily need to think about like what your next move is. It just feels intuitive and stuff just comes out and it just works. Eventually you'll hit the end of a combo string, and then you will need to reset, reposition, and then to like start your attack string again. But when you're in the flow, you're really in the flow and it feels fantastic. Um, yeah, so there's more I can say about the Bloodraven form. I will say this one last thing. It uses a meter, so there's a meter burn mechanic in this game. The meter fuels the Bloodraven form, and you fill it up over time. It just refills gradually, or refills by simply attacking, landing hits, doing obliteration techniques. That's really big for refilling the gauge. And so you're never really short on energy for powering your Bloodraven attacks, which is really good because you need to be constantly breaking people's guards and taking back your turn in fights, because you don't want to be overly defensive. You don't want to be always just running around waiting for an opening. You have to make your openings in this game. So it's very aggressive minded. It's it very much promotes aggression, repositioning, and crowd control. And the Bloodraven form attacks are absolutely critical to maintaining that sort of flow. So apart from combat, one of the other main mechanics in this game are the traversal mini games. I'll call them mini games for now because they're only sporadically introduced within some of the chapters. You can see here we have the rail grinding. This is the first one of these traversal mini games that you encounter. There's also gliding or paragliding, where you are in this canyon with these gusts of wind, and you have to ride these gusts of winds to float up to other accessible areas and reach the next sort of checkpoint in the level. And finally, as far as I know, there's surfing or wakeboarding. And so there's areas where there's water and there's tunnels, underground watery tunnels, and you need to surf on this, ride on this surfboard and traverse the level that way. And I just got through a section where they combine all three of these together, and it's absolutely exhilarating. I will say that there's been some criticism about these traversal mini games, these traversal segments. They don't necessarily bother me too much. I'm all for palette cleanser game mechanics. It's that, if without these things, it's basically they make you walk around a bunch and explore a bunch of empty space, or they just add in more combat arenas. And there's already enough combat in this game. There's a ton of combat. You don't worry, you'll be fighting almost nonstop. oh, not nonstop, but you'll be getting your fill of combat. So don't worry about that. I think these traversal mini games are fairly well done. They're not overused, in my opinion, but certain ones like the paragliding in particular suffer a bit from camera issues where you're moving very quickly and the field of view is very tight. And sometimes you need, it's almost like a quick time event where you need to catch a button prompt in time to prevent yourself from falling to your death. And sometimes, unless you're really managing your camera directions, you may actually not see the button prompt soon enough in order to react, and then you fall to your death. It's not like a game over when you fall down a pit, but you do lose like a small bit of your health, and over time this is going to add up quite a bit, and it's just annoying because they just kick you back a few seconds prior, and you have to do it all over again. In some of the longer sequences where you're just like, I just want to get to the spot. I see where I need to go, but because the camera wasn't positioned just so, the button prompt didn't come up in time. So what I ended up doing was just kind of jam on the R button. The R that's usually the button you use to do a transition from like rail to rail, or like gusty wind section to the next gusty wind section. You just hit the right bumper at the right time, and then you'll make the transition successfully. So I just developed a habit where I didn't even wait for the button prompt. I just developed the feel for like, okay, I see the branch coming up. They're probably gonna want me to grapple to that branch so I can swing off of it and get to the next gust of wind. And that's when I start jamming on the right bumper, right? Uh, that's fine, I guess. It's my coping mechanism. But there are definitely times where it's like I did not see the button prompt come out, and I was not expecting it because I was in the middle of managing my camera. And so yeah, it gets a little bit awkward, gets a little bit grating sometimes. The wakeboarding is somewhere in between the rail grinding and the gliding. Like I like the rail grinding parts the most. The gliding parts the least. The surfing parts are somewhere in the middle, and yeah, I think it's fine. It's fine. It's done relatively well. It's a spectacle when they go through these sections. You can see here, I'm just doing the rail grinding, and it's fun. Like once it flows, and you kind of know your you know when to hit your cue to do this or that, then it just looks very cinematic, and you feel like a superstar. All right, so right now I'm showing some gameplay footage of boss fight quite early in the game. It's a slight spoiler. This is, I think, is the third main boss fight in the game. Uh, you've seen this boss fight in the trailers. If you've been following any of the marketing for Ninja Gaiden 4, so it's not like a huge spoiler. But if you're really sensitive to it, then you can just skip ahead a few minutes, and I won't hold it against you at all. So for this section, I'm gonna close off this first impressions video here, just talking very briefly about the story, like very briefly. The story seems fine so far. The cutscenes are done very well, and I like how they set things up. One thing that works against the game a little bit is that they set the game in Neo Tokyo, like a very future dystopian Tokyo, where the Dark Dragon is dead, but the carcass of the Dark Dragon is looming over the entire city of Tokyo, and it's because of it, it's raining cursed rain down upon the city, and then that cursed rain is, bringing out the demons and the fiends and warping things and making things really unpleasant. It's basically turned the city into a living hell. And this setting is a little bit limiting for at least the first bit of the game, at least what I played so far. the first several levels, the first several chapters are set in the city, and it can be a little bit dark. It'll be a little bit overly repetitive in terms of the visuals and the textures that they use, because you're really just dealing with alleyways, industrial looking things, very cyberpunk techy looking rooms. So it gets maybe a little visually repetitive for some people. For me, as someone who loves cyberpunk and science fiction in general, it didn't bother me one bit. And then due to the overall dark look of the game in the Tokyo sections, they make you liberal use of things like yellow highlights in the level design to kind of help you to point the way, to point you towards the critical path, right? Some This really bothers some people. For me, it's fine, because the point of this game is not to explore and really like poke your nose into every little corner. The point of the game is to get to the next combat. And so the less time I spend walking around in circles wondering where to go next, the better. And then it's very clear what the side paths are. And you just go down these side paths to complete optional mission objectives and to look for consumables, right? Because health can be in short supply, especially if you're spending all your money upgrading your skills. So you don't always have enough cash to buy healing items, and you rely on picking those up from chests. And you find these chests by going off the beaten path, right? So I mean, I'm sorry, I kind of straight off of talking about the story strictly, and end up talking about the level design. The story is fine so far. Like I said, they set things up nicely. They have a new protagonist in Yakumo. Cutscenes are filmed nicely and staged very professionally, and the voice acting, at least the Japanese voice acting, is very good. The English dub is not so great in my opinion, and that leads me to kind of like the a final personal note for this first impressions video, which is Japanese learning the Japanese language and getting immersed in Japanese culture. How valuable or how useful is this game for learning Japanese language? This is just a personal thing for me. So I'm a beginner Japanese language learner right now, and what I'm trying to do when I play video games, especially those made from a Japanese studio, is to play them in their native language. So for Japanese games, if Japanese dub is available, then I will play with the Japanese dub with English subtitles. So I'm hoping to just immerse myself in the language a bit more, even when I'm not actively studying. So with that out of the way, how good of a game is Ninja Gaiden 4 for this language immersion? I would just quickly say that it's just okay. As you might imagine, for such a fast-paced action game, the only times I'm able to really pay attention to subtitles is when there's a cutscene or if there's no combat going on. There's actually a fair amount of radio chatter and dialogue that happens while you're in combat, because there's characters who are talking into your earpiece to give you some information or to give you some exposition. And during those times when I'm in the middle of combat and they're chatting away in the background, I have no idea what they're saying unless I have to be recording and I play back that section afterwards. Right? I just do not have the capacity to read subtitles while I'm in the middle of a intense combat situation. However, during cutscenes and during the slower moments, or even when I'm just walking around the levels exploring, it's perfectly fine to try and concentrate on the Japanese during that time. Overall, though, I mean, because this game is dealing with so many fantastical elements, I don't feel like there's a lot of practical vocabulary I could necessarily learn or practical grammar. It's just kind of fun to try and pick out words here and there. But this is, I imagine, a very similar case of like people trying to learn Japanese just by watching anime all day and hoping that they absorb everything through osmosis and constant exposure. probably not going to happen that way, but it's just nice to have the English voice actors um, coming out, because I do feel as I mentioned, the Japanese dub is way better than the English dub. And if nothing else, when I do get a chance to actually read the subtitles and try and match it up with what I'm hearing through the audio, it is pretty nice. But I think a game like a JRPG, for example, is going to be way better for just being able to have more of that constant exposure and be able to concentrate to what's being said and what's being shown in the subtitles. So just more of a personal note, and for anyone who may be in the similar boat as I, which is probably like maybe 1% of people watching this video, or even less, if you are interested in the language and you want to just expose yourself as much as possible, Ninja Gaiden 4 is just an okay way to do it, just because it's mainly action based. There's not that much dialogue, and a lot of the dialogue is going to be lost on you during the very intensive action sequences. So that's all I gotta say about that. I almost forgot to talk about the difficulty in this game, right? A very important thing to talk about for a Ninja Gaiden game is difficulty balance. So, I haven't finished the game yet. I'm only halfway through, but I can definitely speak on how the normal difficulty is shaping up. That's what I've been playing on, just normal difficulty. Just a reminder, there are three default difficulty settings. There's hero mode, there's normal, and there's hard. And then after you finish the game once, you can unlock Master Ninja difficulty, which is supposed to be extremely tough, only for the best of the best, that sort of stuff. On normal difficulty, it is a very good challenge. As someone who's played Ninja Gaidens in the past, has finished Ninja Gaiden 2 a couple times, it is a very sizable challenge. Anyone who's new to the Ninja Gaiden series is in for a bit of a rude awakening in terms of just the speed of the gameplay, the aggressiveness of the enemies, and the volume of enemies that are thrown at you. Right, this is going to be a huge adjustment for people who are used to very combo-heavy games like DMC, or just more laid-back character action games in the past, such as the original God of War trilogy on the PlayStation 2 and 3. In terms of just comparison to other Ninja Gaiden games of the past, I would say the normal difficulty for Ninja Gaiden 4 is about on par with Path of the Acolyte from Ninja Gaiden 2 Vanilla. The original Ninja Gaiden 2 Acolyte difficulty is about on par with the normal difficulty for this game. Normal difficulty for Ninja Gaiden 4 is more difficult than Path of the Warrior on Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black on Warrior was kind of challenging in parts, but nothing too stressful. I never really got hard stuck anywhere. It was a fairly easygoing experience, and Ninja Gaiden 4 is quite a bit harder than Warrior on 2 Black. So hopefully that gives you a decent point of reference for where I think the difficulty balance sits in this game. A lot of the difficulty comes from the learning curve of the new mechanics, such as the Bloodraven form, and all the whole suite of moves that comes out of that, plus the Berserk mode that you get very early in the game. And then there's also the fact that the boss fights in this game are more intricate. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily more challenging than in past games, but the boss fights are definitely more intricate. And if you have problems with sort of like playing through multiple phases of a boss fight and recognizing different attack patterns, this will be a bit of an issue, because in previous Ninja Gaiden games, there are a lot of the bosses are just plain annoying, or they're simplistic, but they're also kind of annoying. So as soon as you figure out the one thing you need to do, then getting past some of those bosses can be pretty easy. So far in Ninja Gaiden 4, the bosses are they're well designed. They actually put a lot of thought into making these set pieces, real spectacles, and putting up a fair challenge. So yeah, I would say for the casual action fan, this is going to be a very, very good challenge on normal difficulty. if you're hardcore Ninja Gaiden veteran, you've finished previous games on Path of the Mentor or Path of the Master Ninja, then it's not going to be too bad at all on normal, and you probably want to start on hard difficulty in Ninja Gaiden 4. So that's going to wrap up my first impressions. I quote first impressions because my first impressions have been, I've already put in like what 12 hours in this game at this point, and I'm only halfway through. So there's like first, second, third, and fourth impressions at this point. I hope you've gotten some value out of this. If you've watched this far, God bless, and all the thanks to you. I will be back with some more Ninja Gaiden 4 content as soon as I finish the game on normal and put in a fair bit of time into the hard difficulty. I will probably come out with a final review to encapsulate all of my thoughts of the game from beginning to end. Until then, give Ninja Gaiden 4 a chance if you haven't played already. If you are already playing it, then kudos, and I hope you continue to enjoy the game, because I certainly am. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for liking this video and for subscribing to the channel. Every little bit helps, including any comments you leave on this and other videos. So I thank you all very much. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.